Why does Kyrie Irving want to be traded? How much do the Cavs want in return? Is there a way for LeBron and Kyrie to make up and play together again? The only question left is, say it with me, you win? Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown Podcast. I am pleased to bring on Dave McMenamin, who is an NBA reporter for ESPN, as I'm sure we all know. And Dave, it's a real pleasure to have you. I'm in my vacation digs, and you are in your complete suit and looking really nice. So thank you for coming on and joining us.
Thanks for having me on. I have been a consumer of your work for years now, so it's cool to be on with you.
Wow. Okay. Well, you know, I think it tells you I've been toiling for a long time in obscurity. So thank you for being part of the conversation. And you know, I thought we would kind of jump in with what's going on with the Cavaliers because it's a sort of long and sordid story, and I'm not even sure everyone's been up to date with everything that you've been reporting in the past. So I'm kind of curious, how do we get to it from a team that's been to the finals so many years in a row to such kind of like, can we call it disarray? Is it officially disarray yet?
It is right now, of course, because it's just the fear of the unknown. We don't know if the Cavs will indeed get the type of trade package for Kyrie Irving that they feel like would be requisite talent to keep them afloat as the top team in the Eastern Conference. We don't know what would happen if they don't get that trade package and they decide to just hold on to Kyrie, how that could play out in the locker room for next season. So that's why the disarray applies to what's going on right now.
Fair enough. Now, you know, because you think that, like, you know, things are going great. They've been ruling the East, and everyone should be happy playing with one another. Does this sort of center on that kind of? Are we talking about, you know, locker room issues? Are we talking about personnel fit? Where do you think the root of what's going on with Kyrie is now?
I think the root of it goes back to the summer of 2014 when he was offered a max contract extension, and in that meeting, LeBron James' name didn't come up. And he was sold on a vision of being the leader of the Cavs franchise and playing a style of ball reminiscent of Steve Nash and the Phoenix Suns, and everything being filtered around him as the centerpiece. And Kyrie believed that that would be his future, the next 5 years of his career as he went from burgeoning all-star and started to make his mark on the league, that he would do so with players around him made to fit his game. Of course, 11 days later, LeBron James comes out with the I'm coming home letter with Lee Jenkins of Sports Illustrated, and everything changes. The roster becomes fit around LeBron James. Rightfully so, most would say. And Kyrie did really well in those 3 years while playing an accelerated kind of growth process. You know, rather than kind of get to go through his bumps and bruises and take his licks as the face of the franchise, he was cast into a secondary role. But it wasn't the normal secondary role. It was a secondary role where he was expected to be able to compete for championships when he hadn't even played in a playoff series. And so that kind of chafed at him, but he did his best to still work with it. But when you get through these 3 years, there was some sense of finality because, you know, David Griffin's leaving the franchise this summer, right? That was a guy that had been instrumental in keeping Kyrie Irving within the team structure the last couple of years. And when that's gone, and then you look at the future, this summer of 2018, we all know LeBron James can opt out to become a free agent. It's a sense of a little bit of, I'm going to make sure that my fate is not tied to you anymore. And I will make this request now. Rather than have to deal with the potential fallout of a post-LeBron era in 2018 for the Cavs organization, because he started his career in the post-LeBron era 2010 time frame, and that really kind of was the pall hanging over everything he did. You know, if he had a great game, it was, you know, the Cavs have the next great star after LeBron. If he didn't play well and didn't carry the franchise, it was, oh man, he didn't do what LeBron did as a young superstar. And, you know, even if LeBron was to leave in the summer of 2018, because some people have made the argument, well, why not just let LeBron go and you can have your own team again? Well, one, you still have a roster that's been made to fit around LeBron. And so Kyrie, while those players were still under contract, would not have the team that he had been sold on. And two, that LeBron factor will always exist for the perpetuity of the Cavs franchise. No one will ever be able to match, what he's brought. You look at Chicago, right? Like they haven't gotten over Jordan. The only time they got over briefly was Derrick Rose because he was a native son. Well, LeBron's not just the best player on the franchise; he's also the native son. So it's not like that will never be overcome. And so, he put together a trade proposal, trade request, gave the Cavs the teams he'd like to go to. He's kept quiet because he figured he would have a better chance of actually having that trade request come to fruition. If it wasn't out there for every team to get more leverage on, thinking the Cavs were desperate. And now we stand nearly 5 weeks after that trade request, and no deal has been struck yet.
Well, let me ask you this. It's a couple different things. First of all, who leaked this if it wasn't Kyrie?
Brian Windhorst was the guy who wrote the story for ESPN, did a great job, and I believe he's gone on record. I don't want to compromise his sources, but he has said that players found out about it.
Okay.
And so once players found out about it, they talk, and Brian got wind of it. I actually got wind of it. That Kyrie was unhappy about 6 days before Brian broke the story, but I couldn't get a confirmation.
Right.
And Brian was able to get a confirmation that this was actuality. Now, I don't know where that confirmation came from, but if it did come from someone associated with LeBron, that doesn't mean that LeBron's camp would have leaked it. It just means they would have confirmed it.
Well, okay. So here's what's interesting because we do have the Uncle Drew, with Kyrie, and like a little bit of a glimpse of who he is and what kind of a person he is. But it's not always easy to get a handle on. Like you could say, oh, he wants to go somewhere else so he can be the man. Which then there's a lot of stuff involved with that where he wants to score all the points. But when you look at the output from last year, I don't know if he would be able to score much more than 25, 26 a game. And then when you hear him requested that he wanted to go to a place like San Antonio, for instance, where he would never get the amount of touches he'd want to score that. It's this weird dichotomy, and I can't quite get my handle on who Kyrie is and really what he's trying to get out of all this, because it doesn't necessarily sound like he wants to be like the man in charge of everything and shoot every shot and control every possession, or am I reading that wrong?
I mean, he already averaged more shots than he'd ever averaged last year. It wasn't like he wasn't getting his shots. He averaged more shots than LeBron did in the postseason, when you'd say it matters more. I've talked to people close to Kyrie, I guess you're saying Kyrie's camp, that they buck against that perception that he is trying to be the man. Their framing of the situation is that he wants to be in a different basketball situation that does not involve another man who is so all-encompassing. The LeBron machine, for lack of a better term, is something that is unlike any other team has in the NBA. And obviously, one of the best, in my opinion, best three players ever to play the game. So that would come with it. But you think about the teams that are on Kyrie's list. There's strong coaches there. And not that Tyronn Lue, I think he does a wonderful job, but he doesn't have the cachet of, a Greg Popovich who's on that list, cachet of Brad Stevens, some of the teams that are out there and been linked, Tom Thibodeau, right? So that, without that figure in the Cavs organization, Kyrie feels like there is just like a day-to-day personality, power, whatever you want to call it, that he goes through, compromise that he goes through with the Cavs organization that he wouldn't do elsewhere. And yes, I mean, you could also put a pin in his balloon of the man theory by saying, well, it wouldn't be Kawhi Leonard be the man in San Antonio. He was a Finals MVP. Wouldn't Karl Anthony Towns and be the man in Minnesota or Kristaps Porzingis or whatever. It's more of the idea of, rather than playing with an all-time great and all of the pressure of preserving that legacy, adding to that legacy, winning for the sake of this window is so short, so we better maximize it. He'd just go and play with great players, not all-time great players, and get to live probably a more peaceful existence and get back to what basketball is about for him, which is, you watch this Nike commercial with the drummer from The Roots, it's an expression of art and an expression of freedom, and it's a joyful process, and it's been a refuge for him after he suffered some tragedy with losing his mother at a young age. Get back to that. In Cleveland, he doesn't have that. Some would say, you put yourself through extremes and then you look and admire the work that you did at the end of the day. And maybe he would regret this decision someday because he would leave championships on the table. And he specifically told me in the NBA Finals, NBA Playoffs 101, that I'm not going to let my selfishness get in the way of NBA championships. Perhaps he decided it just wasn't worth it anymore.
Well, I'm going to throw this out there because in the beginning we introduced you as an NBA, guy who covers the NBA for ESPN, even though we're focusing on Cleveland. But, it's interesting. I wonder from your point of view and what you've heard across the league, if there are any parallels to the notion of Kevin Durant leaving OKC and Russ and Kyrie wanting to leave Cleveland and LeBron.
Well, I mean, the way it's differed is that Kyrie actually did win a championship with Cleveland. So it was, he had felt, and I've had some people say to me that, he wanted to do this after that in the summer of 2016, make this request. Now, of course, he didn't do it, but that some have suggested to me that he was already feeling that way back then. Mm-hmm. Him looking at it as like he has the freedom to make that move now. Obviously, Kevin Durant has been explicit that his move was not just about basketball. It was about, overall well-being, about personal growth, et cetera, et cetera. I would think those are major factors for a 25-year-old like Kyrie Irving, who has a very curious mind, who does not try to define himself as a basketball player. He takes great pride in, and he's very aware of his skill and where that puts him in the echelon of basketball players. But he doesn't want to be known as, the list. You list his stats, you list his rings, and that's how you think of him 20 years down the line. I mean, he's kind of a radical thinker who, on a recent podcast with Richard Jefferson and Channing Frye spoke about, or actually this wasn't on a podcast, he alluded to it on a podcast, and then he did a recent interview where he wants to have like a commune, his own personal society that he will kind of develop. That he doesn't think the way most superstars would think.
I'm telling you, I mean, if only there was someone who can do a video that can compare these, because I do feel like stylistically on the floor, we had a lot of sort of ISO, your turn, my turn from Kevin Durant and Russ. And we do know, I believe, if we've seen it reported, that Durant kind of ultimately chafed at that and recognized a better version of play with the Warriors. And I kind of wonder if that's what Kyrie is also envisioning, especially it's the Spurs thing, really, because first of all, he could be the Tony Parker when Tony Parker was in his prime, and probably do that role infinitely better than Tony Parker ever could have, because he can shoot so much better than him. So I start to wonder if he is starting to envision I want to be in an offense where we have much more pace and space, and we have more ball movement, which I think I don't want to say the Cavs didn't have that or don't always have it, but it definitely feels like, certainly in the finals at least, that kind of stuff kind of grinds to a halt. And I wonder, I mean, again, I just thought of this while you were talking, and I haven't thought about it too much, but it's something interesting there because, again, you're right. He could, at the very least, stay in Cleveland, win 55 to 60 games or whatever it's going to be. Probably get right. They're going to get to they would get to the finals guaranteed. I would imagine,
I would
right?
Think so, yes.
And so this is a real radical, right? Guy. Now, you're talking about how different Kyrie is and the notion of a commune. Just out of curiosity, is the whole flatland, Earth is flat thing? Is that like a serious thing too, or is that just sort of him being, provocative?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's ever fully backed off of it.
Okay.
Perhaps he likes to keep people guessing, but I think he gave some further explanation of it. This is an example of how media focuses on the stuff that doesn't matter. And he, I don't know if I quite label it contentious relationship with the press in Cleveland. It's arm's length relationship. I'll put it that way.
Interesting.
I've had some revealing conversations with him over 3 years. Yet at the same time, sometimes he'll look at me when I ask a question as if he's seen me for the first time. And he's unlike any other player in that regard. That I've, in my role as an NBA reporter, I've been assigned to teams to cover the last 7 years with the Lakers and the Cavs. So I get to know these guys pretty intimately, certainly as much as you can through a reporter-player relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a tough nut to crack. I'm not totally sure. I would not be comfortable saying that I've grown really close to Kyrie in any sense of the word, and I think teammates would say the same thing.
Okay. Yeah, listen, I'm not even quite sure we've landed on the moon when we said we did, so I could go there with him on some out there stuff. But as we move to wrap this up, I thought we can discuss a little bit about the deal or the non-deal that we can't seem to it hasn't happened yet, and I don't know if anything is happening or imminent, but what exactly do you think that the Cavaliers are asking for that is such a hold up? Because it seems like if somebody would have offered him, this trade would have already happened already, right?
Right. So I reported this week that there's no urgency from the Cavs' perspective. I guess that's easy to say when training camp's still maybe 5 or 6 weeks away.
Is it really 5 or 6 weeks away?
Yeah, I mean we're getting.
Man. Okay.
It's pretty close. At the same time, it's far enough away. But yeah, I'd like more summer as well.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I want to be wearing the suit. I want to go out to the beach, but they are not going to trade him just for the sake of trading. They view him as an elite asset. As good as it can get out there. Young, championship experience, economical deal. All things considered, he's making $20 million next year. Steph Curry's making $40 million. Steph Curry twice as good a player as Kyrie Irving. I don't think most people would say that, right? And so they want to be able to get assets in return that will keep them competitive in the short term, which means returning to the finals for a fourth straight year,
mm-hmm.
and also get something that can set themselves up for the 2018 and beyond, certainly with the thought that LeBron could be leaving the franchise. That means, and also beyond that, two-way players. They look at the NBA Finals and they see that is what their roster lacked. They had some specialists that were, at times excellent specialists. But if the specialists don't totally hit, and I'm not trying to single out Kyle Korver, but he's the guy that comes to mind. If he's not doing that specialty to the best of his ability, then what he lacks on the other end becomes far more egregious to deal with. And so that's why when you hear a deal discussed between them and the Phoenix Suns, and Josh Jackson being included, he's the type of two-way player that they envision helping them bridge that gap. Mm-hmm. Obviously, and Andrew Wiggins, who all the metrics say that he's a terrible defender, but then if you look at his actual athleticism and his length and things like that, you're like, he's a guy who could be one of those two-way players. So that's what they're after. They're after a worthy return, and they're going to be patient with it. And if they don't get that right offer, well, what's Kyrie going to do? Is he not going to report, not get paid? I don't think they want to come to that point. But if it does come to that point, there's a thought within the people are familiar with this team that, well, you know what, we'd probably just play ball again and get back to the NBA Finals.
Right. Well, so it sounds like they want an all-star, right? Or probably need an all-star in return, and maybe another just like a wing or somebody, and a pick, right? It seems like they need a starter. Or how about this? They need a starter and a pick, and then some other wing player. Does that sound about right?
That's kind of the package that.
Okay.
Yes.
And if you were Phoenix, would you offer Bledsoe, Jackson, and a pick for Kyrie?
I tweeted this a week or so ago. I'm not sure, because the Phoenix, of course, hired James Jones this offseason. James Jones has been inside that locker room.
The plot thickens.
He's seen Kyrie Irving. I think I reported this on SportsCenter this week. He saw Kyrie Irving in the playoffs this year, in between the first round when they beat Indiana and the second round they played Toronto, go consecutive days without speaking to a teammate at practice. On that stage, it's one thing to say, people go through their ups and downs in the regular season, but when you get to the playoffs, when it's, the main thing is the main thing, and we're, brothers and we're pulling together to get this thing done, even at that level, there were still, things that made him sullen or reclusive from his teammates. I'm not so sure if Phoenix would be interested in that type of deal. Now, maybe James Jones has seen stuff that, he knows just how special Kyrie is, though, and he could sell the franchise on it. But part of me thinks more that it would be a caution flag coming from James Jones. So, and we'll see how much influence he would have. He's only, been there a month. If Robert Sarver wants a superstar like Kyrie Irving, he'll get a superstar because they have the assets to get it. But if they listen and trust the people they hired, and I'm not reporting this, I just know that James Jones is a very intuitive guy, very observing guy. He knows exactly what was strong about those Cavs teams the last 3 years and deficiencies as well. Oh. And he'd probably be able to ascribe all of those strengths and deficiencies to each player.
Yes.
And we'll see how his alchemy would be when it comes to Kyrie Irving.
Yes, he knows how the sausage is being made. And I think here's my last question for you, because when Griffin made the decision to get rid of David Blatt, I think he described it as a cloud over the team and some of the camaraderie, and even on the wins, they weren't together. Is it the same situation now when you talk about Kyrie and LeBron?
That's my phone. Sorry. Again, that anecdote about in between the first and second rounds shows something about even when it's supposed to be as sweet as it can be, there's still something lacking. I've seen this team. It's a unique group, right? Because there is the gap, 7 years between LeBron and Kyrie. They're in different life stages. They're in different career stages. Even I grew up one of 5 siblings. Every 2 or 3 year gap, or chunk of your life, that thing evolves. And so I'm not saying that where it stands right now, if they were to stay together 3 more years, it might not evolve to a better place. But there are ways in which they are not on the same page right now. Kyrie Irving is one of the greatest ball handlers ever to play the game. LeBron James is a forward with the ball in his hands more than the other forward ever to play the game. That's a natural tension. You can't get over that. Kyrie Irving wants to see what he can accomplish in this game, where he has to be the influencer or the decision maker, et cetera, et cetera. As long as LeBron James is playing this game, he is going to be the influencer and the decision maker. So that's another natural tension that will exist. But to peg the Cavs as a joyless bunch, I don't think that's fair. Again, I only see so much that I can see, but I've seen this team really show pride in one another, show a collective purpose, and have a little bit of just a sense of they're in this together. For and even if there is the problems like a family would have.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, we can blame this all on Kevin Durant. Really, it's his fault. So, all right. Last thing, over and under. Kyrie's going to get traded before the season starts. What are you putting it on? What's your odds?
Certainly stronger that he does than if he isn't. Like I would think the only reason he would not be traded before the season started if the best package involved a guy who can't be traded till December 15th, and they were like say perhaps dead set on a Wiggins Teague deal, you know, and Teague can't be traded till the 15th. Well, they were like, all right, the season starts October 17th. We'll go through those 2 months of awkwardness because we know we got the best deal we want. That's the scenario where I would see him being on the team. And then, of course, and I've said this before, it's not irreconcilable until he's wearing a different jersey. If there was some sort of come to Jesus moment where Kyrie and LeBron and Tyronn Lue got in a room together or whatever, I don't think that's a likely scenario whatsoever.
Okay.
But until Kyrie is traded, I guess that is a possible, even if remote, possibility.
Right, and I think that's the right trade. I think that Thibodeau would, in a heartbeat, grab that and have Butler and Kyrie in the backcourt with the rest of that team, Karl Anthony Towns. I think that'd be a really good move.
And
for
of
them.
course, like quick aside on that, Glenn Taylor went out in the press this week and he said that, I'm going to offer Andrew Wiggins a max, but he has to first, prove to me that he's going to give me more than he's already giving me.
Mm-hmm.
You never hear that type of rhetoric from an owner, like publicly challenging a player of, I've got the carrot on the stick, but I got to see how high you're going to jump for it.
Right.
To me, it seems some sort of like challenge or test on Wiggins, and to see if he really wants to be a part of this thing. And if he doesn't get the answer he wants to hear, Glenn Taylor, perhaps that all he needs to hear to say, you know what, yep, let's pull the trigger on the Kyrie deal.
And it's perfect because in theory Butler is going to hamper Wiggins anyway, at least in the offensive end. And who knows if Wiggins is going to maybe like just turn off on that and then not give out on defense. It's a really interesting thing. What's nice about that
Butler
whole thing,
and Kyrie are super close. I reported that. And, Butler's been recruiting him, and Karl Anthony Towns' father is very close with Dred Irving, Kyrie Irving's father. And Dred Irving is very influential in Kyrie Irving's life. So there has been a campaign by Towns and Wiggins to lobby not only Kyrie to want to come there, but the Wolves decision makers to want Kyrie. Yeah,
well, I think that would be a great fit, and it's perfect that they have 2 months to kind of iron things out or see that how clearly it's not going to work on both teams. So, but I can tell you one thing: this has been working really well between you and I so far in the pod. So I can't thank you enough, Dave, for coming on the show. You guys all have to read his book that he wrote with Brian about the Cavs season from their championship season. The championship season. Terrific book, really insightful stuff. And Dave, you'll have to come back on, and we'll have to find out if we're right or not.
Okay, sounds good, Nick.
All right, and don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Dave?
Yeah, I'm in. I'm in for the conversation. B-Ball Breakdown.
All right.